Hi, it's me, your pal Jeremy. I'm joined by our pal Brian.
It's good to be your pal as well, Jeremy, and everyone else.
And last week, we saw something really interesting that we wanted to talk to you guys about, and that is the pros and cons of fan-created media. And the reason why the subject came up was because last week, all of us were talking about and playing this game, Star Wars Force Combat, by this character called The Last Jawa.
Right.
I don't know the guy's real name.
No, and I
couldn't find it.
I think he'll sort of like keep it that way. Yeah, this is a fan-made Star Wars fighting game that basically kit bashes characters from all different eras, and puts them together in one place. It's something that we are sorely lacking right now. And it
even has Count Dooku.
Isn't that crazy?
In it.
Yeah.
Of all things.
It showed up, and we all got really pumped about it. We all decided, let's download it and play it. And within a matter of days, it was gone and removed.
Yeah.
This is entirely fan-made, entirely unofficial, and probably entirely something that the guy was a little scared would get too big too fast.
Right.
And maybe turn into a lawsuit.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. Before we continue with the video, I thought we should maybe hear from someone who fully understands the risk of getting involved and playing around with other people's intellectual property. Not me, I'm not actually a lawyer, I'm dressed up as a lawyer for the sake of the video. I'm actually a huge fan of fan-created stuff. I actually have some of my fan art here. Here's Darth Maul in a custom armor I invented. But anyway, we have quotes from a real actual lawyer, so I will be jumping in here to interject here and there with some key pieces of information that will contradict what the other men in the video are saying. Does that sound good? I will see you in court in the video.
So one of the things that I want to talk about is that always seems to be where the conversation goes, is like fear of the lawsuit, you know? But fear is the way of the dark side.
What does that got to do with anything?
Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side.
That's right.
Fear is a thing that defeats the Green Lanterns, I think. I only know because I watched the movie with Ryan Reynolds, which was not good. So, beyond that, I'm in the dark on that. But I'm pretty sure that fear is bad in both those franchises and also real life.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to fan-created media. So this game in particular, the thing that was so interesting about it to me was that it was actually really cool. It looked awesome, it played cool. It was kind of like Masters of Terras Kasi.
Yes.
Am I saying that right?
Yes, yeah. I think so.
That game came out in '97.
I know.
So it's been since 1997 that we've had like a Star Wars fighting game. That's bonkers.
Over 20 years.
Yeah, it's like an IP where people go around like fighting with swords. I mean, come on, like it couldn't be easier.
It's one of those things you didn't realize you needed until you saw this. Like, we have an awesome new single-player Star Wars game in Fallen Order. We have Battlefront 2, which has been pumping out consistent new maps and content and characters for 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
But we didn't know we needed this. You know,
Yeah.
I think I would have been just as geeked out if they were like, hey, here's another Episode 1 Pod Racer remake.
Right.
It's like, I didn't think I needed this. And so this guy made this game in his spare time, basically while his kid was sleeping, and put it out there. And like most fan games, it gained a lot of traction really fast, and a lot of people found out about it. They got really excited. And then he said,
Well, he tweeted, had no idea this would get so much attention and have no desire to be killed by Mickey Mouse for something I do as a hobby with my kids on weekends. So I'm preemptively removing stuff. But this is just an example of what could be accomplished with even just one guy working on it. If that's really just one guy working on it, I mean, he makes a really solid point.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, right, like a lot of people are like, oh, IGN even talking about it is going to get him busted.
Right.
But it's sort of the point, right? And it sort of pays off for people 9 times out of 10.
Hold on. See this? Fox and Disney can kick my ass for drawing this. I should be in jail. I will be in jail, probably. The important thing is there's nothing legal or fun about creating original fan-created media that isn't actually original because somebody else owns the right to it. That's right. Here's some of what the lawyer had to say. The more eyes on a project, the more likely it is to be taken down in just about every circumstance. So while press does not help most fan projects, neither does success, users, or any other normally positive aspect of creating a product, fan games are across the board not legal, and not only can they be taken down quickly and effectively by the rights holders, but most creators of these fan games are liable for millions in damages.
Correct.
Now other people are jumping in here. Mike Futter, he's saying, I give it 24 hours. Disney Lucas doesn't even need to file a C&D, it's cease and desist. They can just sue you into oblivion. Take your amazing creativity and do something unique with it. Stop making fan games. The lawsuits can cripple you for decades.
Yeah, I don't know if I entirely agree with that, because I went to art school, and the reason I started drawing when I was a kid was I saw the Ghostbusters logo, and I wanted to learn how to draw it myself, so I traced it. And then I went from there and started drawing it freehand, and then started drawing ghosts without looking at the Ghostbusters logo.
Right.
And now I have a long career of drawing ghosts. No, I don't. I don't have any of that. But I do think that there is something to be said.
It's at least like 2% of your job.
2% of my job is drawing ghosts. I think there is something to be said about a fan who dedicates their free time to making something that isn't inherently original, but is giving them a fundamental idea of how game design works using pre-existing characters and settings and themes. I think that can lead to you eventually going on and having an idea of what you want to do with your own creative work.
Hey, yep, back. Fan games and other projects can get shut down for a plethora of reasons, some of which are covered by these chuckleheads in the video here, but also because having inferior products out there utilizing your characters, artwork, etc. is not good for your brand. Most consumers can't tell what is legitimate versus what is made by a fan, and as a result can lead people to swearing off entire series because of a bad experience. That said, working on similar products, working with other companies that you are properly licensing to, or protecting your intellectual property generally are all great reasons to take down a fan game.
I'm gonna preface this by giving you some real world examples. So I've been very involved in like fan films and animations and stuff over the last 10 years, and I have literally never seen somebody get like sued or like hurt financially for it. And yet I've seen a lot of people, career path into jobs in traditional media and gaming and film and television and stuff like this. And there's a couple reasons for it. One, I think a lot of IP holders understand, especially like Star Wars, is like very like kind of welcoming to the fan community, to cosplayers, to artists. If video games are art, then like what's the difference of using art assets to make a game versus making a fan film, which they seem totally fine with, versus doing fan art on DeviantArt or something, versus dressing up in a costume and showing up at a convention. If it's art, right? And what kind of message are these companies sending when every single product that we have to consume is based on a pre-established IP?
Right.
Every movie is like Star Wars and Marvel and DC and all of this stuff.
Well, I think we are sort of more paranoid on the video game side, specifically because of companies like Nintendo, who are very quick.
Kind of the outlier.
Yeah, they will strike out of the sky and shut down fan-made Pokemon games. That 2D Metroid remake of the original Game Boy one, because they were concurrently working on one in studio, which none of us knew about.
Objection! Just as many fan game designers have been hired by companies as writers and directors have been for making their own infringing intellectual property. Try to make a Star Wars or a Harry Potter film and you'll be dealt with a lot more forcefully than Nintendo ever would. However, all successful IP holders like to protect their brand, and taking down fan games or works is part of that. See that? That belongs to Disney. I could be in jail for drawing that picture.
Is that usually why though? Because they're concurrently working on something? Because I have seen like fan films be taken out. Like, so we have on the back here an image from Adi Shankar and Joseph Kahn's Power Rangers short, which I think kind of like pissed off the IP holders at first until they realized it was getting like tens of millions of views.
Right.
And then all of a sudden these guys are consulting on the film project, right?
Conjecture, but I'll allow it.
I've also seen, Addy do like a Venom short that ended up kind of disappearing, presumably because Sony was in development.
Actually, it's equally likely that it was for copyrighted music, but okay.
These things have real actors in them, like that one had Ryan Quanten in it.
Yeah,
so you can see why that would go down, but there was no like harm done.
No, and if that name Adi Shankar sounds familiar, it's because he worked on Castlevania for Netflix. And so this is a guy that started out doing
Dread.
And Dread, yeah. He started out working on fan film stuff and then elevated.
Well, to be fair, he started out working on like kind of like genre action, like real movies.
Right.
But like wanted to get into this stuff because that's what he was passionate about. That's what a lot of us are passionate about.
Yeah.
And this was the way in. But I think your point stands that a lot of it is due to the fact that they might have something in development.
Yep.
Or it might just be like a quintessentially Nintendo thing. In some ways, they've been lightening up on that a little bit, but not as much as Sega.
Yes.
Like you were telling me the story, like a Sonic the Hedgehog story.
Yeah,
Your favorite character.
Yeah, my favorite character. No, Sonic, Sega and Nintendo have been sort of like quietly battling back in the olden days of the console wars. Now they're friends, everybody gets along. Sega has a very different mantra when it comes to this kind of stuff. They hired Christian Whitehead, who was a man who was specifically working on Sonic the Hedgehog ports and fan games and basically finding old parts of old Sonic games and kit bashing them to make new ones. And they hired him to work on Sonic Mania, which is arguably one of the best 2D Sonic games ever made.
Yeah.
They also notoriously tweeted out to a fan who was working on a fan project, hey, we're gonna DMC, we're gonna strike you down from the sky. Just kidding. We encourage fans to make sort of fan properties like this. And so I think that's like, we specifically here at IGN a couple years ago, we did an April Fool's Day video of like a Darth Maul TV show. And Star Wars didn't shut it down. Lucasfilm didn't shut it down. And so I think that fear specifically on the gaming side comes from Nintendo. And it's interesting because I think Nintendo makes some of the most valuable and recognizable properties on Earth. And it's pretty easy to go, I want to make a 2D Zelda game. But the second these things get too big, they get struck down. And video games like this and stories like this are meant to be shared. That's how we get information to each other now. We boost those things up.
I think the one thing that gets you into trouble, actually, is when people do like Kickstarters and Patreons.
Yes.
And they start asking for like the kind of funding that you would have on a real project. For example, let's say you're doing like a fan film and then you're like, let's make this a series. I need $1 million.
Yep.
Right? That's like paying people like full like guild rates to work on it. And that's sort of like, okay, that's kind of crossing the line. If it's a bunch of friends getting together and like, home brewing something or making something, on weekends, that's one thing. But doing like, physical products or something like that becomes like sort of a little bit more of a gray area.
Yeah, I think if you're monetizing an intellectual property that you don't own specifically or have some sort of direct connection to, that is, I think, undeniably a problem zone, right?
Sorry, me again. Here's what the lawyer said. I have quite a few true horror stories I have personally represented. However, nearly any settlement here comes with the strictest of NDAs, and I don't want to jeopardize my clients by even risking speaking about things that have leaked to the public. The lack of specifics and headlines on these stories, however, often leads to people thinking they are just campfire tales and nothing to be afraid of. Please know they are real. Personally, I think that they should make my Dragon Ball Z game. It's about Trunks. Sorry.
Something just sprung to mind, but didn't RJ Palmer start out as like a Pokemon fan artist and then go on to get hired to work on Detective Pikachu?
Yeah, RJ Palmer's an awesome artist. He's actually been here at IGN in our office. He has been working on sort of like realistic looking Pokemon for years.
Yeah.
And it was always like...
They're awesome.
Yeah, and he would sell some prints here and there. I don't think he got in a ton of trouble over...
Most of our art is like fan art from this guy Crowsmack.
Yeah, who's awesome.
We have like a few of them all over and they're great.
And so RJ went on to work on Detective Pikachu because they were like, how do we translate Pokemon to real life? Well, this guy's been doing it for years. And so there is that weird gray area of like people who work on fan games, yes, they could just work on something original, but it's easier to get attention when you work on something recognizable. Also, you cross into the territory of potentially getting in trouble, but there's also the risk-reward of maybe getting hired.
It's the risk-reward thing. I can't tell you how many instances that I've worked on like a fan film or a fan cartoon that's got millions of views, and then I take that same director or animator or somebody on that same skill level and then do something original, and it does like 10% of the views.
Right.
Like it's so much more work from like a marketing and PR perspective to get attention on your first thing, and a lot of these people are coming from outside of the system, right? And that's sort of the benefit and the challenge, right? Getting into the system is hard. If you don't know anybody, if you live in like some bump nowhere or in another country or something, you're not related to the industry at all whatsoever, doing fan created media is like sort of a really good way to get a lot of attention on yourself initially. Like the likelihood that you become a bazillionaire seems, in my experience, greater than the likelihood that you experience financial ruin.
The damages are quite literally so high they are impossible to calculate in many of these instances. Without even getting into other types of damages, there are statutory damages for $150,000 per infringing asset. That is not per game, that is per asset. Most people are beyond bankrupt just from their loading screens, let alone every other asset used in the game. We are talking hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, in nearly every fan game. Now, will a publisher actually ask for that much from you? Of course not. But they will make damn sure your game is gone, your company is gone, and you sign whatever they want in the process. Keep in mind, I love fan games and I think copyright is way overreaching, so all these scary answers I'm giving are because this stuff is scary. So take it from me if you want to stay out of the slammer, is what I'd say if I was a lawyer. I'm not, I work at IGN. They told me to dress up like a lawyer, sorry.
Yeah.
Rooster Teeth's entire career began doing Halo machinima, and they're just one really obvious example of many. I know tons of guys that were doing machinima back in the day that ended up working on like Mass Effect or Dragon Age or like doing all kinds of stuff, like directing, rigging, puppeting, doing character design. Dan Trachtenberg, how could I forget? He did that Portal No Escape short.
Oh, right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was
a
awesome.
long time ago. It was like one of the first examples where everyone was like, holy shit, like video games could be movies.
Yep.
Do you? You know? Of
We
course.
still don't have a Portal movie or a new Portal game, but
Crazy, right?
go back and watch that.
But the guy got to do 10 Cloverfield Lane. He's done like episodes of The Boys and Black Mirror. Like
it's
he's like a
crazy.
legit Hollywood director.
And I love that because it's like, okay, so the risk is you get struck down from a legal team and they go, take this down immediately, right? Or they go, I'll see you in court, which I don't think happens as often as like, take this down immediately, please.
I don't think it does.
I think the risk is worth the reward. That's, I think, like the final statement we'll put on this is that, like, yes, it's dangerous. Yes, if you go to monetize it, I won't say you deserve to get a legal team sent on you, but that definitely gets into a grayer area. But by doing this, you get to hone your craft. You get to bring fans something that they don't necessarily have. Like for a Star Wars fighting game, we don't have one, haven't had one in 20 years. And the likelihood that this guy gets to work on something cool next time around, or maybe even work on an official Star Wars fighting game, is much higher now than it would have been had he never put this out.
Yeah, and I don't think we're necessarily advocating for that being the only thing that people do.
Yeah.
We know lots of indie game developers that come through here that, you know, have really great original ideas and they're really committed to it and they're really doing it. It's not the only path.
No, definitely not.
It definitely is not the only path, but it can be a lot of fun. And if it comes from a place of love, and if it's not something that you're doing for necessarily financial gain or just because but more because like you're just really passionate about it, or you want people to see what you can do and people are just not seeing you, you know, I truly don't see the harm in it. And you know, I really don't think that we should be living, you know, a life that's driven by fear.
I agree.
Right? That said, I'm not a lawyer.
For the love of God, don't take advice from people on the internet about these kinds of things. Not from anyone, not even from me, even though I look like a real lawyer like you'd see on television, except for when I just say common sense things like just stay out of trouble. I believe it was Lil Jon who once famously said, don't start no won't be no Wise words, Lil Jon. Sage advice. Please don't copyright flag this video.
So, what the hell do I know?
Be careful out there.
Do not take legal advice
From us.
from either of us.
Are you kidding me?
Obviously.
Definitely not. Look at us. Never. It's a bad idea. We look like we're undercover cops.
I'm wearing socks that say "F off, I'm gaming."
That's what an undercover cop would wear.
Correct.
Don't
That's
trust
right.
this man. No, but
right.
seriously, have fun out there and be safe. Don't get caught.
And if you're doing fan-created media, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And send it to us.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
want
want
to
to see it. We love the game. We love these fan films. We love the culture. And we love you.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. And for more conversations like this, keep it locked to IGN.
Check this out. Episode 2, The Clone Wars. It's not what they called it, but I didn't make Star Wars, so George Lucas can arrest me.